welcome or welcome back to Amanda's Trying, where sometimes all we can do is try and get through a day, and that's okay. I'm Amanda, and today I'm going to be talking about anxiety, especially anxiety related to post-concussion syndrome.
I'm trying really hard, I promise, but all that I could do today was cuddle my dog and cry.
So for those of you who don't know, right now I'm dealing with post-concussion syndrome. I've been off of work for a year and a half. So I've made videos that have gone into detail about my post-concussion syndrome, and I will link them up here. It should show up, and you can click that if you want to hear more about my experience with that. Or if you just want to learn more about what post-concussion syndrome is. But on top of that, something that I have really been struggling with lately is my anxiety. Anxiety is something that I've been dealing with my entire life, although I don't think I know, I didn't realize that it was anxiety. As a child, I would make myself physically ill because I was so anxious about being sick or about school or about dying. I had like a new fear of dying like every year. One year it was dying in a house fire. One year it was dying of carbon monoxide poisoning. And I would feel physically ill, and so I didn't realize that it was anxiety. And that's something that's really common with kids, is that anxiety will show up in much more physiological symptoms, like their stomach aching, and so because they don't know what anxiety is, and then they don't know how to process this terrible feeling that is happening in their bodies. My anxiety as a kid just continued to grow as I, went into high school, and I had a ton of like fixations for fears. When I started working part-time in high school, I would feel nauseous and not be able to sleep every night before a shift, and it was just because I was worried, is my alarm going to go off on time? Am I going to wake up? Will I hear my alarm? Will I be able to make it out of the house on time? What if there's an accident and traffic doesn't let me make it to my shift on time? And literally none of those things ever happened. I've never slept through an alarm. But every shift, I could not sleep because I could sleep, but it wasn't restful. And it just, I think my anxiety kept growing as I got older. Once I got to university, I struggled a lot to adjust. I think on the outside, I looked like I was doing fine because I was keeping up with the work, I was getting good grades, I was doing sports outside of school and things like that, but I was a mess inside. There's so many aspects to university that were really unfamiliar. The pace of learning, the social dynamics with your professors and with other students, trying to figure out how to manage your schedule and, switch your classes or find your classes, and it just felt like we were kind of thrown into it, but, to go through the unknowns myself, was very stressful. Even though I could do it, it took a toll. And so I was having nosebleeds once a week in my first semester of university, at least once a week, and they would be lasting like 30 minutes. So I'd be missing class because I couldn't leave my house because my nose was bleeding so much. And I didn't have an appetite, and my hand tremors really became noticeable and constant in my first year of university. In my second semester, I kind of just tried to push through it all. I ended up getting really sick with pneumonia, and I was almost hospitalized. And I am almost certain that it was just my body breaking down because I was so stressed and anxious, and I wasn't coping in a healthy way. And I did need help to learn how to cope properly, but I just thought everybody had, I thought it was normal, and I thought I'm not having panic attacks, so this isn't anxiety, this is just me not able to deal with life and not able to transition to university. Like, this is me being a failure. It looks so obvious now, but when you're in it, you just feel incompetent. And like, you should be able to handle things that are stressing you out, or are making you anxious. So similar to how anxiety manifests itself with children, for me, I noticed all of the physical symptoms, like loss of appetite, my tremors, my nosebleeds, my headaches, but I didn't ever connect them to anxiety. And this is someone who was going to school for social work. I was in classes talking about mental disorders. I was being tested on what are the symptoms of anxiety, and I didn't see it in myself. And so I just want to encourage everyone who's watching to be open to that possibility and to really allow yourself to ask for help and consider anxiety might be an issue for you, because statistically, chances are there's a possibility that it is.
Like, the possibility of all those possibilities being possible is just another possibility that can possibly happen.
And for me, through all of those phases in my life since I was a child, I didn't go to counseling for anxiety. I didn't ever get medicated for it. And I constantly was invalidating my own body and symptoms, and my brain telling me I needed help and I wasn't doing well. I kept on invalidating myself because I thought, I don't have bad enough symptoms. I don't have panic attacks. I can still technically function. I'm doing fine in school. All of these things were excuses for me to not listen to myself. And it was so harmful in the long run. My body broke down. Right now might be a good time for anyone watching to take a minute and think about, are you actually caring for yourself? Or has your mind and your body been screaming for help and you've been ignoring it because you think, oh, everyone lives with pain. Oh, everyone struggles. Yeah, everyone does. But you're not supposed to just be okay with being in pain. I will link the article that I'm talking about here in the description, but it shows that generalized anxiety disorder, the symptoms actually do not involve panic attacks. They are things like increased muscle aches or soreness. So like my shoulder and my neck, even before my concussion, were constantly tight. And I didn't know why. What could it be? Irritability. My family will tell you I showed that symptom. It might shock everyone because I seem like an angel. But I could be very irritable, especially when I was stressed. Difficulty sleeping, I already talked about that, especially when the next day had something like a work shift or somewhere that I had to go that I had never been before and I didn't know, the exact route, or maybe it was in a new building and I didn't know exactly where I was going in there. I would struggle to sleep. Restlessness, yes. I think a lot of people with anxiety can relate to this, but I would like the hour before I had to leave for work, I couldn't do anything. Like I would literally just like be sitting there and like looking at the clock every 2 minutes to make sure like I was gonna leave on time. And I did that for like the hour before. Excessive worry, obviously, that's like self-explanatory, but yes, I had that. And so I look at this article now, or I just look back on what my life looked like and how I was handling it, and I'm like, I am literally the definition of anxiety. And why didn't I see that before? And why didn't I ask for help? To talk about anxiety specifically with post-concussion syndrome. So I've talked about this in my post-concussion syndrome and video, which again, it'll be here if you want to watch that. But my anxiety and what it looked like and the symptoms I had and the things that triggered me, all of that shifted slightly after my concussion. About 6 months with post-concussion syndrome, I started getting panic attacks for the first time in my life. And that was the thing that made me realize I needed help for my anxiety. And yes, panic attacks, are common and they are a part of anxiety disorders, but I do want to just stress again, you don't need panic attacks to deserve help or have valid anxiety, okay? Panic attack is not like the standard and everything above is anxiety and everything below is not. Just to be clear. Because I don't know, for whatever reason in my mind, that's kind of how I viewed it. And then I thought, I don't know, was this technically a panic attack? I mean, okay, yes, I had difficulty breathing, and yes, I was crying, and yes, I couldn't think clearly and couldn't verbally express myself, but like, I didn't think I was dying, so maybe it's not bad enough for it to be a panic attack. There is no technically, okay? If you are having breakdowns and you are struggling to function and do everyday things, then go and get help. Or even if it's just you wonder if maybe you might have a tiny bit of anxiety and it's something that bothers you and makes your life a little bit more difficult, go and talk to someone. Ask about what can I do? What resources are there for me? Please. Things that did appear in my anxiety since my concussion is, first and foremost, needing a schedule. I talk about it in my vlog that I need to pace and plan. That's something, if you have a concussion, you will have heard so much, pacing and planning. And it just has kind of led me to being very fixated on not just my schedule, but the schedule of my family. I need to know where and when everything is happening and where people are gonna be. And, because if I think that someone's gonna be around and dinner is gonna be a collaborative thing, and then turns out I'm on my own for dinner, that's enough to make me spiral because I didn't plan to do that, So that can be really stressful. And I do not adapt well to sudden changes. I need some warning. So even if you are going to change whatever is happening, the plans, giving me a few hours of warning, really important. Or even just, hey, this change in plans is potentially happening, just so I can start wrapping my head around that possibility. And then if it does happen, all right, I knew that this could come, and I'm gonna be okay, I just need a little bit more warning because it just takes me a little bit longer to process things. Speaking of processing, trying to process multiple things at once, my brain cannot multitask, like totally incapable. And instead of recognizing, okay, I can only focus on one thing. My brain's just like, oh my gosh, too many things. I'm just gonna shut down entirely. So, things like being in a room where there's multiple conversations is so hard. I cannot concentrate on like what you're saying to me when there's like two other people on this side having their conversation about something entirely different. I end up just like not hearing anything. Or like if, you know, I'm starting to get stressed and someone's like, okay, what's going on? What are you feeling? How can I help you? And I'm like, I can't tell you any question that you just asked me. Like, I have no idea what you just said. Asking multiple questions and not giving me time and space to process the question and answer it, I will shut down. What to do when I am anxious? You're not helpless in that situation. I'm not helpless in that situation. So I want to talk about things that I do that help and could possibly help you if you experience anxiety. And then I'm also going to talk about what other people around me can do that really is helpful. So if you're wanting to support someone with anxiety and you're not really sure how, maybe this will be helpful. Or if you have anxiety and people have asked you like, what can I do? And you're like, I don't freaking know. Like, shouldn't you try and figure that out? Like, I already have a lot going on. And maybe this will give you some ideas. So, for myself, first and foremost, of course, the pacing and the planning, having a plan for what my day looks like, not so that I can be set on that and inflexible, but just so that I have an idea of what I need to get done and when I will be able to do those things, and also when I need to rest. That's really important, because if I'm physically not feeling well, then I cannot mentally cope with any sort of stressor. So taking care of my physical well-being is really important. When I am having bad days, I try to be really intentional about telling that to people, saying, hey, by the way, today's a really rough day. And then they know. I'm not going to be able to handle certain conversations, or if something stressful happens, you know, I'm going to need more support. Just making sure that the people around me have the same expectations for me that I have for myself that day, if that makes sense. Removing myself from overwhelming situations, sometimes this is impossible, but, you know, if it is a really loud room where there's multiple conversations and there's the TV on and I can't even think, and I'm getting overwhelmed and I'm starting to struggle to breathe, you know, just to walk to a different room, even if it's the bathroom, and I have to lock myself in there for 5 minutes and do like deep breathing exercises to remove myself from that stimulation, especially auditory stimulation. That can be really difficult for me, and to just give myself time to be in silence and to calm myself down a little bit, just so I can handle existing. Sometimes you just need to give yourself a timeout. So in that timeout, you might just need to be doing some calming techniques, but also like giving yourself time and space to cry, which is something I still struggle to do. I still want to apologize every time I cry, and I still kind of want to look at myself like, hey, come on, you know. Crying is really healthy, and it's really good for you. It releases chemicals that actually help you feel relief, and it just helps you to kind of move on. When I cry, then I'm like, all right, cried about it, now I'm gonna move on to the next part of my day. I put a link for deep breathing exercises. It uses diaphragmatic breathing, But I mean, I'm sure everyone kind of is aware of, like, you know, having your good posture and breathing into your stomach. And it talks about, like, putting a hand on, like, your chest and on your stomach, and really feel your stomach moving in and out because you want the air going all the way down there. I find that very helpful, especially because as I get more and more anxious, breathing starts to feel difficult, and so to just, like, slow down and just be very intentional about breathing is helpful for me to kind of calm myself. Body scans can also be really helpful. For me, I don't find it particularly helpful just because I am in chronic pain, and so body scans kind of end up with me being like, look at all this tension and pain that I cannot breathe out and that I always have. And then I just start fixating on that and getting anxious about that. It doesn't work for me. But I will link some, like, scripts of body scans that just kind of give you directions of how to do it and how to think about it, if you think you might find that helpful. For me also, because I think auditory stuff can be so overwhelming, to, like, have music that I can just put in and that I know is going to be calm is so helpful, and it's so relieving, and I can do that anywhere. I can be in public, I can be at home, I can be in a car, and I can have that music. That for me is like something I can just put it in my ears, close my eyes, and focus on calming down. So I have created playlists, specifically songs that, like, really speak to my anxiety in a encouraging, loving way. But sometimes I find those songs sometimes make me focus on the anxiety, so I also have just, like, chill music that isn't necessarily like, hey, you're gonna be okay. But it's just like, you know, chill vibes. Sometimes that's better than, like, the motivational music. And the last thing that I do, I pray. For me, my faith is really important, and it's also something that, you know, I can always lean on, and it's a constant in my life. If you're not religious, or for you, the idea of praying is really difficult, because there have been times in my life where praying can feel like a stressful thing, depending on where I'm at. Meditating is also something, just, you know, having something that you can kind of focus your mind on that is going to stop you from spiraling. I also have these coping statements. I'll put a picture up, that I worked on creating with my therapist. And they're just reminders. They can feel really obvious when you're not anxious, but then in the middle of your anxiety, it can be really helpful to remember, like, okay, one thing at a time. What do I need to do right now? Maybe it's, I need to cry. All right, let's cry. And then you cry, and then you're like, okay, next thing I have to do, I need to eat something. Now, what others can do that help me, because I know sometimes you're not the person who's anxious, but seeing them be overwhelmed and having no clue how to help them can be incredibly overwhelming for you. So, an easy place to start is having a conversation with the person who has anxiety when they're feeling good, and being like, hey, when you're struggling, when you're starting to get a lot of symptoms and feeling really anxious, what is helpful for me to do? Sometimes we don't have answers. I've had conversations with my mom and I'm like, Mom, I don't know. I have no idea. But, you know, sometimes if like you debrief after there was a situation, then there's like specific examples where I'm like, okay, Mom, when you did this, like that was not helpful. Like sometimes for me, like having someone rub my back makes me nauseous. I don't know why. It's like, I guess part of like overstimulation. Now I have to like process that someone's touching me, and I just like get so overwhelmed that I get nauseous. I don't know. So it's not always helpful to have people like rubbing my back or doing something like that. So having those conversations, not in the moment, but like, you know, when they're feeling good and able to verbalize their thoughts and to kind of have that higher cognitive thinking can be really helpful. And another one that feels like it should be obvious, but honestly people struggle with a lot is listen when I'm saying that I'm anxious, and believing me when I say I'm struggling. Even if you're like, you know, if I'm saying, hey, this is really stressing me out, and somebody jokes about it, or even just like, you know, kind of says in like a teasing way, oh my gosh, you're so dramatic. Alright, excuse me, I'm gonna go lock myself in the bathroom and cry for 20 minutes. Like, it's not helpful. I know, I'm hilarious, I have a great sense of humor. Me and my brother roast each other all the time. It's our favorite pastime. But when I am anxious, if he roasts me, I will cry. Do not do it. It is not helpful because I am not the cool older sister in that moment. I am a broken mess and you need to treat me with caution. I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about my own symptoms, but asking one question at a time, really important. Because I can't process multiple questions, or like if you're like, okay, what do you want? Do you want me to do this? Or do you want me to do this? Or should we do this? And I'm like, ugh. It's helpful to do one at a time, be patient. I take forever to process what you just said, and then even longer to verbalize what my response is. Let me take that time. It might be 2 minutes that you're waiting. Just let me do it. And asking like yes or no questions or being specific as possible, also very helpful. Another thing, acknowledge and validate what a person is feeling. There's this thing called toxic positivity. I don't know if you guys are aware with this concept, but it's where you refuse to acknowledge any sort of negative emotion. And it can sound like a good thing. Like, you know, if I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain and I just want today to end, and then somebody's like, but look at you, you're still going and you like look so good and you're just doing amazing. I'm like, don't say that. It's like, okay, I feel like you don't hear anything that I'm saying. Whereas if I just said, you know, I'm in so much pain, I want this day to end, and someone's like, I can't imagine, because you can't. Do you need food? Do you want me to get you a snack? I'll love you forever. Just like validating and like being okay with me expressing negative emotions, and like being okay to sit in the sadness and the bitterness, because sometimes life sucks. Just let people be sad and be sad with them. Another simple thing, if the situation is the thing that's overwhelming, like lots of noises, helping me or the person who's overwhelmed leave the situation, or it's super crowded, and helping them leave. It's really stressful sometimes to try and navigate and like get out of situations on your own, because there's this fear like, oh, people are gonna judge me for leaving early, or what if the person I came with is mad or disappointed that I have symptoms, and then for them to instead be like, hey, I got you, let's go. You need to go. I'm gonna come with you. It feels like you're validating again. You're acknowledging, hey, I see that you're struggling. I'm gonna help you. I'm gonna be there for you. The easiest and also the most effective one, food. I don't know how many times I've mentioned this in the video already. Listen, I can be having a breakdown about the most existential thing, but then if someone gives me a cookie, life is good. There is light at the end of the tunnel.
Halvesies? No, wholesies.
Reminder, all of the resources that I have cited in the video, and also just some websites that I thought might be helpful, I have linked in the description. So if you or anybody who is experiencing anxiety, you know anybody who is, you think it could be helpful, go ahead, check those out. Anxiety is really common, and it's also something that there's a lot of support and resources for. Don't feel like you have to live with it, because you don't. To wrap up the video, we're back with a song recommendation. So today, the song that I'm recommending is Sun Goes Down by Charlotte Cardin. First of all, I love her voice. It's just like, you know, a little husky. I don't know, it just feels very warm and comforting. And the lyrics are actually a really good example of validating someone's pain rather than trying to see, you know, the silver lining in everything and trying to like solve their problems that really you can't solve. Like I said earlier, sometimes, a lot of times when people are struggling, they just want you to say, I see that you are struggling, and I'm going to be here with you the entire time. So, yes, listen to the song, be comforted by it, maybe learn how to comfort others a little bit, and I will see you next time.
How you holding up? Want me to stay the night when it's all too rough? I hope you realize that I can hold your hand when the sun goes down. I'm gonna hold your hand.